welcome to On the Media's very first live stream ever.
Good afternoon, I'm Joe Baker, a member of the Delaware Tribe of Indians.
Hello, everybody. How very nice to be with you this night. I'm Nimet Habachy, and you may know me as one of the hosts on WQXR. Today is very, very special because we are celebrating Dr. Adolphus Hailstork, who has had a quite significant birthday not very long ago. So it seems quite appropriate that we should continue to celebrate. This is somebody who deserves to be celebrated always. He has given us a great deal over some 60 plus years. He has been reflecting some of what has been happening in our world in his music, both in history and in the all too eventful 20th and 21st centuries. So tonight we have the most marvelous musicians to illustrate his work. And we'll find out more about them, more about the music, and more about a quintessential New Yorker, who is Dr. Adolphus Hailstork. With us tonight, the Harlem Chamber Players, led by Liz Player, who is a player of the clarinet, and so many marvelous people with her. The first piece of music that we're going to hear is the Songs of the Magi. There are 4 movements to it, and we're going to be hearing the first one. There is the call, there is the journey of the Magi, the wonder, and the joy. Here is the call from the Magi of Dr. Adolphus Hailstork. the first movement from the Songs of the Magi by Adolphus Hailstork, played by members of the Harlem Chamber Players, who are the guests tonight. Dr. Hailstork isn't able to be with us. He is the consummate New Yorker, but he couldn't make it down for this interview. But I had the pleasure of sitting with him on Zoom the other day. We had a wonderful chat. It ranged over his early career, starting with his childhood, his time in France, and his engagement and involvement with the period in which he finds himself on this earth. I found it an absolutely thrilling experience to be with him, and I think you'll enjoy the interview. Dr. Adolphus Hailstork. It is my great pleasure to be with Dr. Adolphus Hailstork, the man with one of the most wonderful names in music, to have a chat with a man who is also celebrating an important birthday still, although it is just recently passed on April the 17th. Yeah. Dr. Hailstork has been composing since the 60s. He has given us 4 symphonies, 3 operas, a great deal of chamber music and choral music. You've been a student of David Diamond and Nadia Boulanger, among others. You have a PhD from Michigan State University, and your music has been very much championed of late by Joanne Falletta, who leads the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. You have a most distinguished career as a teacher of music, many students, and it is truly an honor to be with you this day, Dr. Hailstork.
Thank you very much.
A happy birthday, and do you feel any different?
Thank you. No, I don't. I'm glad you said the birthday was past and not the person. Yeah. Yes.
Not at all. The person seems to be
vigorous,
chugging along quite happily.
Yeah.
But you don't feel suddenly, oh my goodness, it's a different day or a different.
No, I don't know when that's going to kick in, but right now I'm aiming for 90, and we'll see what happens. Check back with me in 10 years.
Were you into music from the get-go? I mean, were you as a child totally?
Absolutely. I like to tell folks that it wasn't until I hit my mid-40s or something that it dawned on me that some people actually chose their vocations. That I never had a choice. It was like a calling. As soon as I discovered music, I was in music for all of my life, and it is one of the glorious fields to be in. You're always learning. You're always hearing new pieces. It's just glorious, and so it's always. I've been in it for a long time. Let me just say that.
Well, what was your first exposure? Was it somebody singing? Was it a parent? Was it somebody?
Well, I took a music aptitude test in the 3rd grade, and I guess I did pretty well on that because the public school system invited me to go hear an orchestra concert and pick an instrument I think I'd like to study. Of course, I picked a harp, and they said, no, you only think you're going to get a violin because they weren't going to provide me with a harp. They did provide me with a violin. So I started violin lessons and played in the middle school orchestra, in the high school orchestra, and I also sang in choirs. And became part of a boys and men's cathedral choir in Albany, New York. And that was it. And I sang solos in the high school choir. And it was it. I just thought that's what you're supposed to do in life. At least that's what I was supposed to do. When I hit high school, I started writing because I had heard that there was a guy in high school. When I was a junior high, I heard there was a guy in high school composing. I said, oh, I got to try that, because by that time I had sung solos, conducted the junior high school orchestra, played the violin. I said, what haven't I done? I have never composed music. Let me try that. And boom, as soon as I got into that, it was like a done deal. That was the thing I most enjoyed. I preferred to make up pieces at the piano than practice my scales and arpeggios anyway. And it was all joyful all the time. So that's how I got started. And between the public school system and the cathedral, and then into college, et cetera, et cetera.
And then you wound up coming out of the boulangerie or
Well,
working with Nadia Boulanger. How was that, living in Paris
yeah,
and
I
the
don't know how many people would have known.
Fontainebleau? And
When I was graduating from Howard University in '63, I applied for a travel fellowship, and I won it, and I had a chance. And they asked me, where do I want to go, and what kind of studies do I want to do? And here I am. And I was just a kid graduating from college, and I said, I want to study with Nadia Boulanger. I mean, I'm sure they fell off the chairs because.
what did you know about her already? She'd worked with Aaron Copland and Lenny Bernstein. So
Right, exactly. If you were seriously into music, you knew that name. And I won the thing, and I went over and studied with her for a summer, and it was a wonderful experience. My first trip overseas, and I studied compositions. She had a fabulous theory teacher who also worked with her, and we would sit around in the cafes at night and solfege through our Bach prelude. She assigned a Bach prelude, and we'd sing it in solfege and all the different parts. And it was fun. It was the most strenuous music making study I ever had.
she was demanding, huh?
Exactly. Very demanding, but also very enlightening at the same time.
And they say that anybody that worked with her came out of the boulangerie, out of her bakery, because her name was Boulanger. I always thought that was absolutely delightful.
Yeah, I thought so too. I don't think I studied with her long enough to be that totally encapsulated in the Boulanger style, but she makes a lasting impression. She made a lasting impression. She's the only teacher I ever was with. When she walked in the room, the entire class stood up every single day, because she was very highly honored. She was 75 when I went to study with her, and I just wanted the experience.
How marvelous! And then you came back to America and picked up where you left off, and you've never stopped. You've been composing, always with a view to what's going on around you and what we're all experiencing in life.
Yes.
Always played, or rather composed, around what was topical, what was happening.
That's true.
How did that begin, or has that just always been your tendency or what you wanted to do?
That's an interesting question. I just can't. It maybe come out of my love, of theater music, because often that would reflect the times. Also, I was raised in the time of Rodgers and Hammerstein, and if you stop to think about some of their musicals, King and I,
South Pacific.
for instance, South Pacific, they dealt with issues.
Yes.
Issues of national importance, and that had an impact on me. I was also I was just telling my wife about 10 days ago or something, that I was reading the books of Schomburg. And what was I doing in junior high school reading the books of Schomburg? And I was I remember hearing radio broadcasts of refugees from World War II, because that was still an unsettled question when I was a young man at junior high school and high school. So the whole thing of the plights of displaced Europeans also impacted me. So a person who grew up in World War II and the aftermath had to be aware, I think, of what was going on in the larger world, and I always was.
But you carried on this theme throughout the 60s, civil rights.
Yes.
You have always composed music that was of the moment. You are, in fact, still doing that, I believe. Perhaps you could tell us about some of the music you're composing, or that is recent in your output, that touches on what's going on around us, of which there is so much.
Well, I have been asked by the Harlem Chamber Players, Liz Players in charge of that, to write a piece that commemorated the massacre, actually, in Tulsa in 1921, so 100 years ago. And so I wrote a piece called Tulsa 1921, and Janae Bridges is going to sing the solo in that, and that's for strings, percussion, and harp. And then on another piece that a friend of mine, my collaborator and librettist colleague, Herbert Martin, sent me a text a week after the murder of George Floyd. And I asked him, Herb, do you want me to set this? Is that why you sent it to me? He said, yes, would you please? And so I started setting what he called a requiem. And that will be done next year, 2 years after the murder. And so being aware of those things, I think is important. I don't know how you write just abstractly. It may have also come out of the fact that I came up in church music at the Cathedral of All Saints in Albany. And of course, when you have a church service, the church service stands for something. If they have the different seasons of the church year, and you're dealing with an issue of the history of the church, and so there's meaning to music. It's just not an abstract. If you can count to 12, you're a composer. I never could buy into that. So that's it. I hope I didn't get too serious there.
But you also dealt with history, and it is still serious. Your work, Rise for Freedom, was written for Cincinnati, and
Yes.
it's about the Underground Railroad.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So you have delved into history musically as well.
That's correct. That's correct. And that was, I'm really proud of that opera. It's only an hour long, but it does deal with a slave who had escaped, but he didn't go very far. He just went over to Ohio, across the river from Kentucky, and would then go back at night and help other slaves escape. So it was a very courageous thing he did, because he knew he would be murdered as soon as he was caught. And it's a heroic story, John P. Parker. Yeah.
On a happier note, you arranged Amazing Grace for the inaugural in recent.
Well, yes, I wrote a piece called A Fanfare on Amazing Grace. And it started off as an organ piece, because I'm an organist, and then it became a piece for organ and brass quintet. And then I had a chance to orchestrate it. I orchestrated it, and then its final version, I guess, the Marine band contacted me and said, we've heard of this. Mm-hmm. And Joanne Folletta was a friend of the conductor of the Marine band, and they said, we can transcribe this for band. Would you like that? And I said, that's fine. And so they played it for the prelude music of the Joe Biden's inauguration. It was very nice. So
there you are in the forefront of what's going on in America. And you have been, it's very hard to pigeonhole your music. It is it is varied and exciting and reflects what's going on. I had the pleasure of hearing your piano pieces about the refugee situation. They were played by pianist Doris Stevens,
yeah.
That's still coming up, and
yeah.
That's very exciting also.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. She plays so gorgeously. Yes. But I was touched by the children being kept in cages in the southwestern part of the United States. That really, really moved me. And so I wrote a series of pieces which can make a suite and for piano solo, and she does it beautifully.
And I believe they will be played on the 30th of May, no?
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Coming.
It's hard for me to keep track now. I'm happy about that.
What a wonderful thing to be able to say.
Exactly.
I hope you are enjoying this important year. The celebration official is perhaps gone by, but may it be a year of many celebrations, and more celebrations to come and more music to come, Dr. Hailstork.
Thank you, Nimet.
I think we're all very, very grateful. And now, we'll go back to our music with the Harlem Chamber Players And we are going to hear the first and the third movements from your work, Detroit. This is played by a quintet, and the pianist is David Barry. And thank you again.
Thank you.
The first and the third movements of Detroit, a quintet by Dr. Adolphus Hailstork, whom we are honoring this night, part of his celebration of an important birthday, never mind which one. After all the great music, we get to meet some of the performers. Liz Player, who is the founder and executive director of the Harlem Chamber Players, pleasure to have you, and the Grammy Award winner baritone Kenneth Overton, and Amadi Azikiwe, Community Engagement Director of the Harlem Chamber Players. So glad to have you with us. I can see you all, and I'm delighted to be able to meet you a little bit. Liz, perhaps we can start with you. When and how did you become acquainted with the music of Adolphus Hailstork? What was the beginning of the relationship? And how long ago?
You know what? I can't really remember how long ago. I just remember that he mailed me some music. And at the time, I didn't know who he was, but I learned more about him from other people, other musicians, of course, Terrence McKnight on this show. And I've been thinking about programming his music for a while. What I really wanted was a commission. And so I waited until I was able to build up the organization enough to raise enough money so that I can reach out to him and then ask him to write a new piece for us. And
how long ago would that have been that you found that you could actually commission something?
I think in 2017, that's when I first reached out to Dr. Hailstork, and I asked him to write us a piece. And he said he wanted to wait a year. And he said, do you know what 2019 is? And he said, you know, that's the 400th anniversary of when the first Black slaves were brought to America. And so that was the very first piece that we performed by Dr. Hailstork, which is the next piece that you'll hear, Nobody Know. We gave the world premiere at the Schomburg Center in February of 2019.
That's marvelous. Yes, we are going to be hearing it. But also there is a piece on Tulsa that is also a work that you have commissioned. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That's connected with Juneteenth.
That's when this will be broadcast. I reached out to him again because I wanted to commemorate the Tulsa Race Massacre in some way. And I knew that Dr. Hailstork would be able to write something beautiful and meaningful and just set the tone for it. So I reached out to Dr. Hailstork again. And in fact, we haven't advertised this enough, but he's our composer in residence for this 2020 to 21 season. So I thought it would be fitting for him to write a piece around Tulsa as well.
And Amadi, when did you first come in contact with the music, and have you been engaged with it for some time now?
With this piece, this particular piece, somewhere within the last 8 months to a year, I think, is when I knew that we were going to do this, and we started getting ideas, and I got the score. And so this has been a long time in preparation. But I will say I share the confidence, of course, as Liz does, and as we all do, in Dr. Hailstork. And I've known him for over 20 years in different settings. We actually taught in the same university, but not at the same time.
I see.
Yeah.
So he's really a friend as much as he is a major mentor and provider of fabulous music for you all.
Absolutely.
And Kenneth, I am so taken with the fact that you have played Porgy over 100 times. I have that correctly?
You have that correctly.
Strikes me as a record. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And how did you find your way out of Porgy to other things?
It's actually not a record, and I'm sort of glad. I think my dear friend, the great bass baritone Alvy Powell, probably has the record with maybe like 700 performances. So I'm nowhere near that, and I don't even want to try to reach it in any sort of way. But Porgy has been a very good friend to me. He's helped me to see the world. I've sung it in about 7 countries at least outside the United States. So it's been a beautiful journey with such an iconic figure that actually lived and walked the earth, which is very fascinating to me. And I felt like I was passed a torch from the greats like William Warfield and Todd Duncan, all the greats that came before me that did it. So it's sort of a legacy piece for me. So I like to go back and visit it from time to time, but I give myself breaks in between when I do it.
Do you think it's a piece that will stay with you for a long time still to come?
I think so. I want to sing it until my voice or my knees tell me that I can't.
And how did you all come together? What is the process for creating a group such as yours? Liz, perhaps you can address that. And that was a long time ago already. You've been together for how long have you been the Harlem Players, the Chamber Players?
We started a chamber music series in 2008, but I've been inspired by many others before me. Amadi Azikiwe here started the Harlem Symphony Orchestra, and I had the pleasure of playing in that in 2004. And then several years later, my love has always been chamber music. And so the reason we started at first is to give a chance for Black and Brown musicians who are underrepresented in classical music. And also, I wanted a chance to play chamber music more often. So I started it with a violist by the name of Charles Dalton, who has since passed away. And we didn't have the name the Harlem Chamber Players at first. That came about a year later after Charles left the organization. And then I teamed up with my partner, Carl Jackson, and we decided to officially name the group the Harlem Chamber Players. And so we've been slowly building since then.
How have you managed to sustain yourselves during the pandemic? How have you managed to have some cohesion, seen each other or not seen each other? How did that go for you? How did you manage it?
When the pandemic hit, it was hard. It was frankly devastating. because we had planned our most ambitious program at the time. We wanted to present the Nathaniel Dett Oratorio, the Ordering of Moses, in partnership with the cathedral. And of course, as we all know, in March, everything got canceled. So then it was Andrew Owsley of the Death of Classical series wanted us to perform outdoors. So I called Amadi. We put together a string quartet to play some concerts outdoors, and people really enjoyed it. I mean, of course, we had to be very careful.
But people did show up.
Yes.
Was this before we were all wearing masks or after the masks?
Were people, I think people were wearing masks at that time. Yes.
Masks. Yeah, everyone.
And this was outdoors. So it took place at the historic Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. And they made sure to set markers to make sure that groups that came were 6 feet apart. And this was up on top of the Hill of Graves in the cemetery. And it was beautiful outside, and people were thrilled to be out there. I was surprised by the turnout.
Really?
And so, yes, and this happened September 19th and 26th. And there were 3 concerts on both dates. So there was a break, and they let a limited number of people come up, and there were a lot. I think it was pretty much at capacity, for, with the social distancing.
Was there anybody in the group that was concerned about being out there, that perhaps thought, I'm not sure I really want to do this? Or everybody unanimously said, hey, we'll wear masks, we'll go out there, we'll play music?
Everyone agreed to do this. There was some concern. For instance, one of the players wanted to make sure that we did not rehearse in a studio where there were a lot of singers, of course. So then I reached out to Broadway Presbyterian Church uptown, where it's very spacious, and the quartet had plenty of room to spread out to be as safe as possible. And they've been really good about following all the precautions.
You have performed in many venues, in many countries. In the case of Amadi, you've been everywhere. I think you've touched every continent, or perhaps not. I'm
almost
not sure.
Every continent.
What about Australia?
I haven't yet been to Australia, although I once did get an invitation to join the Australian String Quartet.
Oh, well, there you go.
This was a really long time ago. But no, I haven't been yet to Australia.
And are invitations pouring in these days? Are things opening up? What is your sense of what's happening now?
I think a lot of things are opening up. In fact, starting from, of course, the summer, this past summer, I saw so many organizations redoing and rethinking. And so it really gave me hope. And it took time to do that. But for instance, and I think I'm remembering this correctly, an opera company in Oklahoma, it could even be Tulsa, decided, you know what, we are going to have opera, and it's going to be on this baseball field. So, and it was very successful, and I thought, way to go.
Well, I think people have been hungry for their music, and I express gratitude for your return, delight in your return, especially in the music making that you do for us. And Ken, I'm looking forward very much to the next segment. But before we do that, I have a question, if I may, which comes from Carol Yost. I'd be very interested in what Mr. Hailstork was trying to say in this piece, why it was called Detroit and what it meant to him. Perhaps one of you could tell us.
Oh, Detroit is really it's kind of a tip of the hat to the Brazil Denard chorale from Detroit. And Mr. Denard was a renowned choral conductor gospel. And so that's why you also find elements of that in the piece. So it's really, and I feel like I met Mr. Denard a long time ago at a festival in Rochester. He brought the chorus. So I won't say I met him personally, but the two of them certainly knew each other. And so this is like a personal homage to Mr. Denard.
Well, I think Dr. Hailstork's brand of finding themes in almost everything he is about, from church music to travels to what has been going on, is something remarkable. And I think of Richard Strauss, for example, who wrote autobiographical music, but here is Dr. Hailstork living through this tumultuous period, applying what is around him to his music. Have you met that with many composers, of modern composers, or mostly with a Dr. Hailstork or some people like him? But how many times do you meet a composer who is reflecting the age in which he is living in his music?
Always.
Always.
Always. Even if it's not intended.
Mm-hmm.
You can find composers that are influenced by the writing of their time, which changes as they mature. Usually it happens that way. But also, and I'm fond of saying this, artists have always been at the forefront of social discourse. And you express the reaction of the people who with whom you share your art. In the compositions that you write, in the paintings, theater, it's all, and he's absolutely doing that, and as well he should.
Always.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I must turn to the Grammy Award winner and ask, what's it like winning a Grammy?
It's still very surreal, but it's sometimes I wake up and I have to remind myself that it happened, but then I also have to remind myself that I have to continue to work, and I cannot plateau and allow that to sort of get in the way of more progress. I look at it as a challenge to do more and to do better. But it's a wonderful thing. I was not expecting it when I first cracked open that score and started to work with, again, a living composer in Richard Daniel Poor and a tremendous conductor in Joanne Falletta, to lead this project. You don't think about, oh, well, we may win a Grammy for this. You just want to do great work, and you want to sing the right notes because the composer is sitting right there in front of you. And so that was the intention. And then to win a Grammy for singing the role of Yeshua, for Jesus, is hugely amazing to me and very special.
And do you think Mr. Daniel Poor will be composing something soon again, perhaps for you? Or
we are in talks for that. Absolutely. Yes.
How
yes.
exciting.
Very exciting.
And so your association with Dr. Hailstork is ongoing, and you are in fact in anticipation of performing more of his music quite soon.
Quite soon, actually. It's so interesting. I was a nervous wreck at the premiere of Nobody Know because he was there and Herbert Martin, the librettist, was there, and I could see them from the stage because the Schomburg is a very sort of intimate space and it was sold out. And so I felt their energy and I wanted to do great for them. But afterwards he said, if there's anything that, if there's any text that you want to have set, please let me know and I'll write something for you. And so I'm having text written for me for him to set, but I'm also doing the world premiere of his latest Requiem that he spoke about in your interview, entitled A Knee on the Neck, with the National Symphony.
We've lived through some terrible times in recent years. Mm-hmm. Do you feel it's affected your spirit in the music making?
Absolutely.
Negatively, for the most part, or a sense of fighting it?
It has affected it essentially. I believe that artists have a duty to society. We are often the vessels for peace. Society turns to the arts for healing. Society turns to the arts for happiness, for moving forward. And so I think as an artist, it is my responsibility to continue to express and to sing and to act what is going on today. And I take that lead from my heroes from the Harlem Renaissance, like Langston Hughes and like Margaret Bonds and Florence Price and Paul Laurence Dunbar and James Baldwin. They spoke and wrote and sang and composed what was going on. And so I feel that it is imperative for me as an artist to continue that legacy.
Do you feel that there is a renaissance of the Harlem Renaissance right now?
I do. There's so many wonderful composers, young composers that have been inspired by Dr. Hailstork that are coming up, who are writing incredible music, both chamber music, orchestral music, vocal music, and operatic music, but also they're writing about what's going on. I'm doing a world premiere of an oratorio called The African American Requiem, which was written by a young composer named Damian Jeter with the Portland Symphony Orchestra. And I'm so looking forward to that. He's young and exciting, but writing about what's going on today. So I do feel a gigantic Harlem Renaissance Part 2 upon us.
Where will you go when things become normalized? You'll re-enter the concert halls. Do you think you've opened up some doors that used to be closed, but ironically, because of the pandemic, they've opened?
Yes.
That's too much to hope. Because I think, quite frankly, Zoom has done its fair share of opening up fields that were perhaps closed to some who couldn't travel to get to the concert hall or other. I wonder how that's going to affect all of you, the Harlem Chamber Players, and people in other venues and other disciplines as well. Do you think you've had an opening up effect for venues?
Absolutely. I think, at first it was really hard, but we had to get up and do something. And now I think we're, in an odd way, in some ways, we're thriving during the pandemic because we did not have an online presence at all before the pandemic happened. And so as we move forward and we're able to get back into the concert hall, I see us going forward, presenting concerts online as well as in person. We certainly miss the live performances because there's nothing like, the reaction from the audience, joining, the community that we create when we're all together. I mean, we really miss that, but, just being online also, I think, boosted our presence and just gave us more opportunities too. So I see us doing a combination.
It's very hard to speak of this absolute world tragedy and try to pretend that, well, there are good things coming out of it. But actually, there are a few. The world has gone through its own brand of hell, but we do seem to be surviving it, coming away from it, producing some new aspects to our lives from it. And what about the music? Do you think music will reflect the pandemic? Do you think people will be basically inspired by it to actually write music that is connected with this misery? Or is that really pushing it?
I think yes and no. I think it's sort of impossible to ignore this time period. And I think for musicians all over the world that we've all been affected so much by it, we've got to have it sort of immortalized in art in some way. But then in another way, I think we're fatigued by it. And the last thing that I want to do is continue to sort of worry about being a super spreader, being a singer. I want to get back, not necessarily to where we were before, but going forward and being better at it, being more inclusive about it. I think this whole sort of Zoom world and virtual performance, we can't just throw it away, because we've worked so hard to make it accessible and to make it wonderful, and so that it reaches people who would otherwise not be able to get to us or even be able to afford to come to concerts. I think a lot of organizations are going to wake up, in a sense, to making in-person art more accessible to the everyday human being, to the everyday young person, to the children, and pouring it back into our educational system. We've got to wake up and see to it that the arts survive, because the arts are going to pull us through this, especially emotionally.
And what about children? Have you found yourselves performing with children in the audiences? Do you think they are willy-nilly because you're on Zoom, perhaps hearing more than they might have otherwise? Have you been aware of children being in your periphery?
I haven't personally, not yet.
I wonder if that's opened up a little bit for them as well.
Well, sorry, I teach 2 different online classes for elementary school students. And so I meet with them regularly. And, you know, I think I can say with confidence that each of them, I mean, they are learning. I'm happy to share what I know, and I feel like as the class, the students are very willing, asking questions. In one class, we're composing an opera, and so we took a look at the ending of 3 different operas and tried to decide which kind of ending we want. And we've kind of built up the characters and decided who's going to be villains. And now just today we decided where the opening scene is going to be. So it's, you know, the creativity is there. Yeah, and I'm just as excited as they are. You can tell just right now from me talking about it.
Yeah, what's the age range of the kids?
They're all elementary school, but older. So I'm going to say 5th grade, let's say around 5th grade.
My goodness. Ken, what is your plan for the going back? Are there any porgies in the immediate future, or are we leaving Porgy? Is this a period to leave Porgy for a bit?
Actually, I left him for 4 years on purpose, and I just came back to him 2 weeks ago. I traveled to the New Orleans Opera to do live performances of Porgy, 2 more, so I'm at 105. But we've put it back away, and so I have other things coming up besides that.
Well, perhaps you could tell us about our next offering, which is full of meaning and very important, and maybe you could speak about it.
Yes, Nobody Know. It's a, Dr. Hailstork calls it a concert opera for baritone and strings. And he said, which flattered me so much, that when he wrote it after he listened to my recording of spirituals and other art songs by African-American composers. And I was blown away by that, but also really impressed, because I think composers should listen to voices when they're writing for the voice. He has set Herbert Martin's text so beautifully and so theatrically in this piece. It's sort of like an operatic Shana, but with spiritual text. And it's told from the perspective of the man on the cross to the left of Jesus Christ, the thief on the cross. And it's coming back to it now because I haven't sung it in 2 years. The premiere was in February of 2019, and I didn't sing it again until 2 weeks ago. So coming back to it now, and in these times, it took on a deeper meaning for me, a more mature meaning for me. But yeah, it's a beautiful piece, and I didn't realize how difficult it could be, because you rarely have a piece where you sing for 16 to 17 minutes with no other singing or breaks going on. Not even really in opera, unless you're going into Wagner, do you get these extended sort of scenas. So it requires tons of concentration, but it's very emotional and personal. And I felt incredibly honored to premiere it, and I hope to do it many, 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 many times.
I'm sure you will, and we all look forward to hearing it. I look forward to hearing all of you often. We're going to hear the work known as Nobody Know. I thank you so much, Liz, Amide, and Ken, for your presence, for your music making, for your generosity. In truly extraordinary times, you are examples to us all. We go away enriched by being with you for a bit. I do. I thank you for that. And I also thank all of the people that have been engaged in creating this event today. There's Jennifer and David and Ricardo and Veronica. Thank you all. This is all very special. How lucky are we to be able to do this? And now to Nobody Know. Thank you all.
According to your law, Wash me thoroughly, cleanse me from my ambition. was a-rolling through an unfriendly world. I was a-rolling, rolling through an unfriendly world. I was rolling and I'm calling, Lord, do remember me. I was a-rolling. I was rolling through an unfriendly world. I was a-rolling, rolling through an unfriendly world. I was rolling and I'm calling, Lord, do remember me. Robbed of everything, do remember me. Even liberty, do remember me, Lord. I was a-rolling through an unfriendly world. I was a-rolling through an unfriendly world. Robbed of everything, even liberty. I am a soon-to-be a new creature. I am a soon to become a new creature. Oh, I am a soon to be a new creature. I am a soon to become a new creature. What's the matter, church? Why don't you shout, church? Ain't you never seen a cross before? Somebody down there, needs to be cast out. Somebody down there needs to be cast out. Nobody know the trouble he see them nails in his hands. Nobody know his sorrow. See that hole there in his side. Nobody know the terrible he see. Nobody know. according to your love, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant beyond the